The nitrogen cycle. If you remember in an earlier lesson, we did the water cycle, we also did the carbon cycle. Now we're going to look at the nitrogen cycle. Just like water went into the atmosphere and then back to Earth, carbon did the same thing. Well, nitrogen also does the same thing. So nitrogen goes into the atmosphere and it's later returns back to Earth and goes back into the soil. And we're going to look at the different things that happen to the nitrogen as it does this cycle. So the first question is, why do we care about nitrogen? Well, it turns out that without nitrogen, we don't have protein. Without nitrogen, we don't have DNA. You could say without nitrogen, there is no life. All life is based on nitrogen, just like all life was based on carbon, so we have to have it. Very important. When I speak to a lot of the students in 8th grade, a lot of students believe that when we breathe in, it's all oxygen. But it turns out that if you look at the atmosphere, Earth's atmosphere, 78% is nitrogen. So when you're breathing in, you're actually breathing in about 21% oxygen. So you are breathing in oxygen, not as much as a lot of people think. But here's the problem. The nitrogen gas that we can breathe in is not converted to the DNA and the proteins that we need. It's not used. So there's a problem here. How do we get the nitrogen into a form that we can use? And that's what today's lesson is about. We cannot use it in the gas form. There are different ways you can turn the nitrogen gas into a form that can be used. One of them is lightning, another one is fire, and the last one is bacteria. Lightning, of course, is not dependable. There's not always a storm going on. Fire would be destructive in other ways, so that's not the best option. But bacteria is the one we're going to look at and focus on in this lesson. That's the one that we need to depend on the most. There are 4 forms of nitrogen. The first one is nitrogen gas. The next one is ammonium ion, then nitrite, and then nitrate. There's really only 2 forms that the plants can really use, and that's number 2 and number 4 on the screen, ammonia and nitrates. And most plants don't use number 2, which is the ammonia. Most plants prefer number 4, which is the nitrates. So the question is, how do we get through to those stages here? It turns out that bacteria, some of the bacteria will turn the nitrogen gas into ammonia, and some of the plants will be able to use it, the nitrogen, in that form. Most of them cannot. So other bacteria come in and turns it into nitrite, and then other bacteria come in and turn it into nitrate. And at that point, the plants can use them. So the question is, well, how do we animals use it? Well, we either eat the plant that has it, or we eat something that ate the plant. So we have to eat to get it inside of us. To use the nitrogen, bacteria have to quote-unquote fix it. It's not that the nitrogen is broken, it's just that it's in a form that the plants can't use. So the nitrogen is going to fix it. We call that nitrogen fixation. So bacteria lives on the roots of the plants. Specifically, they live on little nodules, and they turn the nitrogen gas into ammonia. And again, other ones turn it into nitrite and then into nitrate. But that entire process is called nitrogen fixation. There's another name for it also we use called nitrification. Denitrification is the exact opposite. This is when an animal or plant starts to decompose. The bacteria can then convert the nitrogen back into the gas form, and that's called denitrification. Assimilation is the word we use when the nitrogen goes into the plant. Of course, as we said earlier, the plants can only use really 2 forms, ammonia or nitrate. They prefer nitrate, but when it goes into the plant, it's called assimilation. As we said a little earlier, animals, which humans are in the animal kingdom, we get the nitrogen inside of us by eating plants, or we eat something that ate the plant. It's all part of the food chain. When plants and animals die, they decompose and it releases ammonia back into the soil for plants to use. Again, this is decomposition. Bacteria helps in this process. It's all a part of the cycle of life. Since all living things have nitrogen in them, that means plants and trees also have them. And when we burn the wood, we release nitrogen back into the air as a gas. Since animals have nitrogen, when we get fossil fuel, which fossil fuel came from a decomposing animal, when we do that, we also, when we burn the fossil fuel, again, release nitrogen back into the air. And that's a problem because the nitrogen bonds with oxygen and forms nitrogen dioxide, NO2. NO2 then reacts with the water vapor and forms nitric acid. And this is what causes acid rain. Acid rain is basically a pH of 5.5 or less. Particularly the averages that we usually see is between 5.0 and 5.5 for acid rain. It does get to about 4.0 sometimes. And a lot of people say, well, Mr. West, does acid rain burn? Well, it's not as bad on humans because humans have the option of going inside. The problem comes with plants and trees. Plants and trees don't have an option to go run inside, so the acid rain continues to fall on them, and over a long period of time, it can kill the plants and kill the trees, and that's where the problem comes in. So define acid rain. Acid rain is rain with a pH of 5.5 or less. Explain the difference pH is between acid rain and pure water. Pure water has a pH of 7.0. 7.0, acid rain 5.5 or lower. Describe the major cause of acid rain. Well, it's burning fossil fuels and burning wood. It releases nitrogen gas into the air, which again bonds with the oxygen to form nitrogen dioxide, and then that, with cohesion, sticks with the water and falls back down as acid rain. Why is acid rain of particular interest? Well, acid rain over time will destroy the trees, the plants. It can kill the fish. Again, humans have the option of going inside, but they don't. And if you remember your lesson on the food chain, if you affect one organism in the food chain, it will affect the others as well. So we need to protect the trees and the plants because they're our sources of food. What are the main chemicals in air pollution that create acid rain? Well, it's nitrogen and oxygen. Nitrogen and oxygen. How long does the chemical reactions take that change air pollution to acid rain? This is between a few hours to a few days. What did the U.S. government do at first to reduce the pollution from smokestacks? Well, smokestacks at first were short, and when the nitrogen gas came out, it would fall in that area around the smokestack and kill the plants in that area. So the government passed a law, let's make taller smokestacks. And it did protect the plants in that area. But the problem is, as it went higher into the air, it was more likely to bond with the oxygen and later to fall down as acid rain. So number 8, was it successful? Not really. It created acid rain. Which region of the continental U.S. is most affected by acid rain? Currently, it's the Northeast. That's where we see most of the acid rain, with about 4.0 to 4.5 on average. However, the Southeast is starting to try to catch up. I'm in the Southeast right now, and our numbers for acid rain is increasing as well. Which region is least affected by acid rain? Well, it would be the West. Where are the sources of nitrogen gas? Well, when animals and plants decay, denitrification occurs and the nitrogen gas goes into the atmosphere. What organisms are responsible for converting the ammonia into nitrite and nitrate? As we said earlier, that's bacteria. What processes are at work below the ground in the nitrogen cycle? Well, we have bacteria on the plant roots, on particularly the nodules, that's converting the nitrogen gas into ammonia, others into nitrite, and then others into nitrate. So you could say nitrification. Where is nitrification occurring? Again, it's on the plant roots, on the nodules with the bacteria. Where is denitrification occurring? This is anywhere in this picture you see some animal or plant dying, or if you see any feces left behind an animal, you would have denitrification. Where is assimilation occurring? And this will be with the plants. Assimilation is when the nitrogen goes into the plant. Where is decomposition occurring in this picture? Anywhere, again, you see a plant or an animal dying, you would have bacteria decomposing it.